Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our first Writing Focus Friday. In the chat, when you attend, if you can give me a thumbs up to make sure everybody can hear me okay. But I'm excited to be here. I'm going to get started on talking all about creating ideas for writing prompts. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome. It is nice to have everybody. I'm going to ask that you interact into the chat. I'll be asking some questions and things like that. And so today is all about creating ideas for writing prompts. All right. So my first question for you is, can you give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Do you struggle in your classroom during writing instruction time to get your students to write? That tends to be a universal issue for a lot of teachers in the classroom. I know early on in my writing career, in my career as a teacher early on, that it was a struggle. Writing was a time of the day that was not fun for either the kids or myself. And that had all to do with the supplements and the curriculum that I was provided with until some years later, where that all changed. And it's something that I love, love, love to do. So give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. How do you feel about writing currently in the classroom? All right. So a little bit about my background. If you've never met me, my name is Chrissy Lewis, and I am the owner of Created to Teach. And I help elementary teachers systematize their writing instruction time so that they can produce more motivated, engaged, and successful writers in their classroom. And I have been in education for over 20 years. I was in the brick and mortar majority of my career until the last 4 years. I've left and I teach online now, and then of course coach teachers. So that is kind of currently what I am doing. My background, I have a liberal studies, liberal arts degree, but I also, after 10 years in the classroom, I knew that something was missing, something wasn't quite right. And I ended up leaving after I had my son, and I went back to school and got my speech pathology degree. I knew that I wanted to do something with students, but at the moment, it wasn't teaching because of my current situation. So fast forward, I ended up not following through into the master's avenue, but I continue to teach. And like I said, I knew early on when I was a young girl that I knew I wanted to work with students. And so here I am continuing to work with students, but now changing a little bit of the direction and coaching teachers. So that is where I am today. I just wanted to share a little bit about that. Now, today we're going to be talking all about creating ideas for writing prompts. But I wanted to also offer you now, and we'll talk about it and how to use it in a moment. But I wanted to offer you this free download, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in the little string around here. Let me go ahead and put it in the comments also. You can grab the link that's coming through in the chat, and you can grab that free download there. So we are going to be talking about that in a moment, but wanted to make sure you had plenty of time to grab that if you haven't already. All right, so today's focus is going to be about student choice, but student choice in relation to creating ideas for writing prompts. So we're going to talk today about the why. Why should we give students choice? What is student choice and how do we implement it? And again, it will go all back to creating ideas for writing prompts. But one of the struggles and reasons for the struggle of not having our students motivated to write is because a lot of times they're kept in this box. And it's so powerful when we give them choice in relation to writing, that things start to explode. So that is going to be the focus of our time together today. So we're going to go ahead and first start with the why. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up in a big screen here so we can see it a little bit more large. So the question is why? Why do we have student choice in the classroom? And I wanted to share this bit of research on student choice in the classroom, and it's a slightly convoluted graph in the sense where when I first looked at this, I thought I don't understand what this means. But as I read through the entire research, it comes from Minnesota State University, and what happened is they wanted to do research after COVID began, because as we all know, so much has taken place or not taken place because of COVID, and a lot has interrupted the students and their learning. And so they did this study, and they wanted to kind of go in and work with a bunch of elementary teachers, students, excuse me, specifically on the idea of comprehension. And so they gave these students 5 questions. That's why there's 5 little sections there. The earlier questions in the beginning talked about, it was basically some of them got to choose a book that they wanted to read. Others did not get to choose a book. Some just various questions about that. But the last part of that graph, the 100% there, is the question about how they did overall, comprehension strategies, attitude, all these things when they were given choice. And so a little bit more emphasis here on that study, that when we give students choice, they can learn at their own pace. They are intrinsically motivated instead of extrinsically. So they are not looking for a prize and what they can get there. It's that internal proud, they're proud of what they've done. They're able to focus on the learning process itself. They're starting to take charge of their own learning. They're motivating themselves. And that is because they have choice. They have interest in what they're learning, and therefore they are engaged. It says that when given choice by teachers, students perceive classroom activities as more important. So at the end here, when we give choice in the classroom, it is linked to student effort, task performance, and subsequent learning. So I wanted to share that tidbit because it's always nice to watch and read the research versus just kind of subjective opinion. All right. So let's talk about what student choice is and isn't before we dive into creating ideas for writing prompts. And it's important to talk about this because, like a lot of things, there's a lot of hearsay and there's a lot of opinions about this or that, but we want to really understand what it is and what it isn't. Now, I'm a type A person, and I like very structured classrooms with very strict or strong classroom management and things like that. And so for you, if you're also type A, you may say, this is not happening. Okay. And there's a lot of different aspects too, like in that research also, they talked about environment and things like that. So I want to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the strongest, how do you feel about giving students choice? How do you feel about that? You can put it in the comments. How do you feel about choice? Maybe you can share in the comments what that looks like in your classroom. Maybe you have flexible seating. Maybe you differentiate throughout your day. What is it that you give choice with? And also, I wanted to make this little comment too. If you are watching the replay, if you can type in their replay and leave the comments, even if you're watching the recording, I would love to interact with you and engage. So I'm going to go ahead and put this bigger so you can see it here. But student choice it revolves around student choice. Okay. So again, it revolves around their choice. Now, again, this is not to mean free reign, but let's go ahead and dive into this a little bit deeper here. So student choice relies on communication and strong teacher-student relationships. So clearly there needs to be classroom management, and all the routines need to be set, and therefore, okay, it allows for flexibility within the structure. So again, There needs to be boundaries within the classroom, but with that, when are expectations that are shared with students, we then can have this strong teacher-student relationship. Okay, it's flexible, as I mentioned. Again, I said provides clear objectives. We need to make sure that we are checking for understanding. So when we are giving them choice, we have to make sure that they understand what our expectations are. With choice, there's a lot more assessment, and it doesn't have to be formal tests that you have to grade and all these things. It could be informal assessment where you're walking around and just watching, just talking to the students. It allows students to progress at different rates. I am a huge proponent or huge advocate and passionate about differentiated instruction, not direct instruction, but differentiated instruction, where I'm understanding and I know that students work at all different paces. They learn differently. They have a different learner type, right? They're working at different grade levels, even within our classroom. All right. And choice also offers authentic learning, which encourages the students' ownership. They take ownership when it's authentic. All right. Nobody wants to be programmed. I know I don't. I'm sure you don't. Now, let's talk about the myths of student choice and what student choice is not. So, it is not something that requires a teacher, that student relationship to be deleted, to be absent. Okay. It definitely needs that strong relationship. It does not mean that the students are running all around the classroom with no rules at all. They do not have free reign. Student choice, they have to plan for each student differently. That is false. Students that have choice, it doesn't mean that you have to plan for every single one of them, nor does it mean that you have to give them an entirely different assignment. It's not going to create extra work for the teacher. It also does not mean that you have to assess once. As I mentioned, you're going to be always monitoring the students to see how they are doing. It is not time consuming. And it does not create students who are entitled. Again, if we teach it correctly and we create those student rules and those boundaries and those expectations, and we make sure that we are checking for understanding, then things should play out smoothly. All right. So, all that said, I want to get into the how. So, we need to make sure we understand what student choice is and is not. We need to understand why we need to incorporate student choice to get to the how and to make it most effective. All right. So, what I want to do is I'm going to talk to you about different ideas on how to get your students engaged, motivated, and start writing. And we're going to do that by different activities that share how to create writing prompts. Now, when I say writing prompts, all of us are aware of the multiple supplements and teacher pay teacher and all these things where we get a variety of box canned prompts. And they're not horrible. But what happens is what we forget is that not every student has the same experiences. So if I say, talk about how you love or don't love pizza, right? Maybe it's a pizza writing prompt. If a student has never experienced eating pizza for one reason or another, then they're going to give you that deer in the headlight look. They're going to put their head down on the desk and start having a meltdown. They may have an attitude, they may be defiant. But a lot of that is because there's a reason behind that. So we want to be careful with those canned writing prompts for that very reason. All right. It could be that they may have an experience with a certain writing prompt we give them, but maybe it sparks a sad memory or something like that. So this is why we're talking about that. So let's go ahead. We're going to talk about 4 different activities that you can do to spark joy and interest and engagement in your students to create a list of writing prompts that they can use across the writing genres. All right. So let's go ahead. I'm going to make this bigger again so you can see it. We're going to talk about ideas for writing prompt bookmarks, how we can implement that. That was the freebie I shared about in the chat. We're going to talk about a writing process notebook. It follows the same idea. That's also a freebie that I can share at the end. There's a game called Torpedo, and I'm going to talk to you about the game or the activity Carousel. So we're going to break down each of these, and here we go. So again, there is that freebie link in the chat if you want to grab that. And I'll show you the physical copy here in just a minute. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the bookmark. Okay, let me go ahead and get back into screen here. So basically, this idea is the way this is set up. Now I have them laminated. Let me go ahead and go full screen here. I have them laminated. And it's set up so that you can add your own students' names or they can add their own. But the idea is that I put here this quote, "A book is a dream you hold in your hand." The thing is that writing provides a therapy, really. If you think about singers, they sing, they write lyrics, it's a therapy. It's people that write poems, people that play instruments, people that draw, right? It's a form of therapy. And so what I wanted to do is I created these bookmarks, and there's girls and there's boys and there's different hair colors and things like that. And then there's some that they can kind of create and customize on their own. But the idea with these bookmarks is, I don't know, let me put this up again. Let me see if I have another. Yeah, that's the next one. So with the bookmarks, each bookmark has a sentence starter, different from a prompt, and they are available for all the writing genres. So for example, this one is "in my opinion." Giving that sentence starter kind of helps them think about, in my opinion, fill in the blank. Now, I also put this here because when I teach writing to students, this is an example of a intro to a topic sentence. And as we know, topic sentences, they all differ based off the writing genre. So what's the idea here is when you are on whatever writing genre you're on, okay, so in this case, it's an opinion. You might get these out, and you don't have to laminate them, but you may get them out, and you might have just a class conversation and just talk about what an opinion is, and you do a whole lesson on it. But what they're able to do is they're able to come up with a list of all the things they have ideas about opinions. Like, what do you have an opinion on? I have an opinion on broccoli. I always use that one. I have an opinion on scary movies. I have an opinion on masks. I have an opinion on, right? We have lots of opinions, right? On everything. So the idea behind this is that they can write it down. Now notice how small it is. And the purpose of that is this. I don't want them writing complete sentences. I want them to be free to just get their ideas down. Just jot it down, write an idea. Because here's the other thing. Students that are intimidated by writing, I just want to make sure we are live. Students that are intimidated by writing, all right, get intimidated, especially if they don't know how to write a complete sentence. Okay. So if they don't know how to write a complete sentence, and then you're expecting them to write a complete sentence when they don't know how and they don't have those foundations, they're not going to even get started. So that's why I like to share the fact that it's just a little section where they can just jot down their 1-word ideas, 1 to 2-word ideas. All right. So as we go through here, this one, there's another one there that is on a different writing prompt, okay, or a different writing genre, excuse me. This one says, "I'll never forget." Again, it's a sentence starter. It's a sentence starter. I'll never forget. This one would go with the personal pronoun. I will never forget Hawaii. I will never forget play date. I will never forget, maybe it's somebody's name. I will never forget dinner, whatever it is. But again, they're jotting it down, all right? The other bookmark is I can make. So this one would be for procedural writing, or I call it a how-to. Do they know how to? What do they know how to do? What can they give directions, step-by-step directions on? I can make my bed. I can make an airplane. I can make my snack. I can make whatever it is. Okay. So these just help them get started. They're just sentence starters, but it goes for the how-to, or it's an expository how-to or a procedural writing piece. The next one says should, blank, should, blank. This one is for a persuasive. So as you do a lesson on persuasive writing, we know that when we are writing a persuasive, we have a specific audience. And when we write a persuasive, we should include very convincing type words: should, ought to, better, right? So that is what this list is, okay? Now, it could be, people in general should not litter, should wash their hands, should drink water, whatever it is. What do they feel about? So what is happening with these bookmarks is that you're giving students the choice, and you're telling them, you know what? Your ideas are great. And that's what it is. And it's a safe space because it's their business. And it's a place where when it's time to write, they can go to their bookmarks, and you can, like I said, have them fill it out, then laminate it, and it's, in their writing folder. And then this one says, how much do you know about? So this one's just kind of something for them to think about, like, what do they know about? What do they know about? This could be another procedural piece of writing. All right. So, and that could also go for an expository research. How much do you know about alligators, horses, whatever it is? So that is the first activity that I would share, that I like to share with you. It just is a creative space that they can customize. It's their ideas. You are prompting them in the sense where you're talking and teaching the genre, but you're not giving the specific topic. You're giving them a sentence starter to think about it, but you're not giving them the prompt. You're not keeping them in that box. Okay. Now, the next one is activity 2. This one is the student writing skills vault. This is actually also a freebie. You can actually go to createdtoteach.com and scroll down a little bit, and you can grab this one there. I'll go back in later and put a direct link to that. But this one is the same idea. Okay. And I've gone ahead and put it in a spiral here. So this is their writing vault. Okay. Again, taking ownership, giving them, encouraging them to tell them, hey, your ideas are awesome. So over here is their little vault. And again, these are kind of sentence starters just to get them thinking. Okay. So what I have here in this section, let me grab it here. There's some anchor charts and things like that. But what I want to share is there's a section here when they are coming up with ideas that are not necessarily for a specific genre, but it's like, oh, I would like to write about that. Oh, I would like to write about that. This one is specific to opinion. You have a space that you can write the genre, or if it's just a random brain dump. Okay. So you can see here, I went ahead and I teach my kids about, opinion, but when we have opinions, a lot of times we incorporate an adjective that shares a feeling or an opinion. So you can see here, I have all these types of ideas with an adjective that shows my opinion right there. Okay. So that could be a brain dump, but again, it could be specifically to a genre or just a place where you welcome them and say, hey, when you have an idea, just like when we write our notes, let them have a space where they could do that. All right. And then, of course, the rest of this, just to show you, is planning pages, and it just goes through the writing process. So let me go back through here. Now, they are differentiated because that is my jam. And so you can see on the screen here, they've got the brain dump area. Then there's the pre-writing that we call the jot, and then the rough draft area. Now, these are differentiated, like I said. So the pre-writing, or I call it jot, pages are differentiated. This one is the lower of the levels, but they do increase from there. So that is the second activity that is amazing for creating ideas for writing prompts. And activity number 3 is called Torpedo. When I was in the classroom, I loved this game. This can actually be played online as well if you teach virtually. But it's called Torpedo if you've never heard of it. So let me go ahead and give you a little rundown of how to play this game. So basically, it can be done. It's more fun in a full whole class activity. And so what happens is say you are going to do an opinion. Keep going back to the opinion. Say you're doing an opinion and you're going to tell the kids that you want them to, at the top of their paper, write the best foods. That's going to be our focus. Now, again, you're not telling them what their best food is, right? You are telling them to think about their best foods. Okay. So you have them put the title at the top of their paper. So then what's going to happen is they're going to be timed. They're going to be timed, and you're going to say something like, all right, I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to quickly write down the best food. What do you think is the best food? So for example, you're going to be in a group. So in my class, the way it was set up is I had my kids in groups. And so say there's a group of 4 and I had 4 groups of 4. Basically, each group, I'm sorry, is going to get one piece of paper and they're all going to share that paper. And you're going to give them a time. You could decide per your class how much time they're going to have. And you say go. And then what happens is, I'm not sure if you can see where I am pointing here, but say the first child writes pizza and then he passes it to the next person and he says lasagna, and then he passes to the next person and she writes Chinese food and so forth. Okay. And they make this list. Now all groups are doing this at the same time. Write your, what you think, pass it on, right? Pass it on, right? Pass it on all the way until the teacher says stop. All right. Then here's where it begins. So then what you do is you choose one group. All right. So say group 1, they get to share one of their on their list, one that's on their list. It can go in any order. But say, for example, this group 1, says pizza. If any of the other groups have pizza on their paper, they say torpedo. They love that. If that's the case, this group 3, crosses it off and group 1 crosses it off. Okay. All right. Notice group 2 didn't have pizza, so they just hang tight. So then you go to the next group 2. All right. Give me one of your items on your list. And they say chicken soup. Somebody in their group put chicken soup. Well, as you can see, group 1 or group 3 did not put chicken soup. So nobody's torpedoing that idea. So they get to circle it. All right. So then it continues on. We go to group 3. So regardless if somebody has it or doesn't, you just keep going. So group 3, all right, give me one of yours. Now, obviously, pizza was marked off because group 1 already shared pizza. So group 3 says bananas. Well, group 2 has bananas. So bananas, group 2 would say torpedo, and then they both would cross it off. So it just keeps going. As you can see here that on group 1, they got to circle these 3, same thing with group 2 and group 3. So basically what happens is the groups count up how many they have circled, and that's who wins. And again, it is just for fun, but it is a way to engage all students. So if they are they're not writers, they're not comfortable. There's so many ways you could do this. And again, if you have a student that is not comfortable, maybe they can sketch their ideas. So you can adapt to the types of kiddos that are in your classroom. But that's how you do that. Now, what do you do with that when that's done? Well, what happens now at that point, it's kind of an activity that gets them excited and gives them ideas to potentially go back to their bookmarks or their writing vault. Okay. So really, that's kind of how you can do that. Also, those could be put on a chart paper at that point, and kids can just go and pick and choose if they need ideas. So that's activity number 3. All right, activity number 4 is I'm going to give you 2 versions. So this one is a carousel activity. So carousel, goes around and around. And so this idea, and I'm sure you've probably heard of this type of activity, but the teacher puts chart paper around the classroom. Okay. Now this is version 1. So say, for example, you want to, you've obviously already taught opinion and persuasive and procedural and all the things. We'll pretend. All right. So you have these up around the room. So you can have a different genre for each chart paper. And again, there's those sentence starters. I feel that people should making a blah, blah, blah. All right. It helps them start thinking. So what happens is there's a small group at each chart paper. And again, you're going to go over classroom management and routines and make sure they understand and all the things. But say a student is at each group. So what's going to happen then is, say there are students at the opinion chart. There's 3 students there. They're going to take some time. They're going to work together. They're going to come up with ideas. They can take turns, but they're going to just go ahead and write their ideas on this chart paper. And then maybe the teacher says stop or rings the bell or whatever they're prompted per the routine and expectations prior to. Then they're going to walk around the room and go to the next chart. Maybe the next chart says persuasive, and then they're going to come up with an idea there. Same thing with the procedural, and it just kind of goes from there. That's one way of doing it. But again, you could take all of these ideas and it gets them excited, and then it's there for them to add to their bookmarks or their vault. Now, activity number 4 is same one, version 2. You might want to go ahead and keep just one opinion all the way across. So then maybe, and this is just to get them excited, okay? Maybe you say, okay, opinion. What's your opinion on screen time? What's your opinion on broccoli? What's your opinion on writing as a whole? Okay. A lot of them will put boring, hard, things like that in the beginning when they're not excited. All right. So you could do it that way too. And again, the same procedure goes. They write this in their little groups, unless you have a super small class, they're small groups and they're just kind of rotating. And of course, again, you're going to give those procedures and things like that. But once you have that list, you then are going to, offer them to be able to put those onto their bookmarks or put those into their vault or whatever. So choice begins when you start offering them things like the bookmark or the vault, or if you have another way of doing it. This doesn't seem like a full-on choice, but it so is. And what happens is your students now are motivated to write because you didn't tell them what to write. You gave them a choice. You told them without telling them, you're valued. What you say and what your ideas are matter. Maybe they don't like to share out loud. Maybe they're introverted. Maybe they're insecure with what they know or they don't know, And so that's when choice begins. And when you give the students choice and you don't tell them their prompt, then you would be amazed at how much they'll write. Sometimes you have to say, okay, we've got to stop. We've got to, things like that. So that is what I want to share with you. So I have a question as we wrap up here. Which activity do you think you may try in your classroom? Which one would you use to get your kiddos to start writing? You can do 1, 2, 3, or 4. Type it in the chat for me. I would love also to have you guys message back or DM or however you want to do it and let me know which activity you tried. If you have pictures, even better. That's super exciting. And if you have a different version you want to share, that is awesome too. So very, very good. Well, if you want to grab the other writing activity, like I mentioned, it's the writing vault. You can go to createteach.com. If you scroll down, I have a few there that you can grab, but I will go back in a moment and add the link in there that you can just click on. So if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to pop them in the chat there and I will get back to you. It was so nice to have you guys on our first Focus Friday for writing. And I hope that helps, that you guys are able to start creating ideas for writing prompts. And I'll see you next Friday. See you later.